sit or
whatever you're comfortable with.
I will kind of stand and sit. So, bio. Let me see how I start this. The bio would be, all right, everybody, you know when you're like a kid, elementary school, everybody draws. I don't really know of any kid that doesn't draw. So everybody draws. It's just that I didn't grow up. I'm still that kid in elementary school. I continued to draw when other people started doing other things with their life. So I kept at it. And with that being the case, I ended up being influenced by the first thing a kid would be influenced by, comic books. So it started with comic books. Love the X-Men, by the way. Marvel Comics over DC any day. But DC does have better movies now. Their movies are better than Marvel movies. Yeah, and still kind of cartoony. It doesn't feel real like the Superman or the Batman deal. But I ended up just being in the cartoon, in the movie, in the comics. And from there, it went from comics to, which was popular, which is still popular and ever so popular now, graffiti. So it went from there to this graffiti thing, and I was like, wow, I like those colors. Wow, I like the way these things interact and the way these letters are moving. I like the characters, and so I started to really relate more to characters than letter writing, though I love letter writing too. And then from that, more into the fine art thing. So then trying to find where I fit into the fine art thing with what I know as an artist. I ended up going to the Art Institute of Atlanta. But I should say I'm originally from San Francisco. And out there, characters, graffiti became, I won't say street art, but it started there, but a lot of artists were doing what's now considered to be street art. More character-based type of art. So they got away from the letter writing because people tend to think that graffiti is like anything that's put on the wall. I mean, that's vandalism, but not necessarily the graffiti that these people practice. So graffiti is actually letter writing, and these people were doing characters, which is a whole other form of something else. It kind of derived from the letter writing aspect of graffiti. So I got into the characters because I liked comic books and that kind of thing, and the figure was always important to me. So I just started to like really focus on the figure. I'm trying to figure out how I can make the figure mine. You know, as an artist, have my own voice with the figure. And so I continued to work on that. And so I ended up going to the Art Institute of Atlanta and got more into the commercial side of things. Didn't really like the commercial side though. I would say I got a knack for it. I still do. I do commercial work now, but then I didn't like it because I felt like they're pushing me into this, and if it's something I want to do, I kind of want to do that on my own. I don't want to be forced into something. So I ended up actually, from that point, I ended up going back and doing street stuff. Then I met this artist by the name of Tony Cacolano, who I ended up being an apprentice for. So Tony was established. The average person probably say it's luck. Like you looked up on it, and not really like that. Now I think back to it. Tony, older guy, he's probably in his 80s, mid 80s now, and he ended up studying in New York. Ended up getting he has a master's in fine arts from Yale. He studied with some of the founders of the New York School, and if you study anything from fine art based and contemporary, you're going to find out that Jackson Pollock and all these guys came from the New York School. And so Tony's teachers were New York School teachers. So I ended up getting a lot of that aspect from him and trying to figure out how do I do something that he can help me with, that I can help myself with. And that's kind of where it started from, really, trying to develop a style of my own. So I kind of had to create a language that he could understand so he could help me. And once that happened, I really started developing as a visual artist. just trying to really come up with my own voice. And that can be somewhat difficult because we all have influences in anything that we create. I mean, whether you write short stories or poems, or you draw, or you paint, or you sculpt, or whatever it may be. 9 times out of 10, we're gonna have some person that we're looking up to, and like, that person right there is the best. I wanna capture some of that. And I think we all emulate until we can find ourselves too. So, a lot of that happened. And eventually, I came to the point to where I'm at now. I would say probably, looking at the artwork, it probably started 5 years ago. I really started developing my own voice. Really about 7 to 5 years ago, somewhere in there. But I didn't really feel comfortable with it, I would say, until about 5 years ago. That I really felt like, wow, and I would go out and look anywhere I could to try to discover if I was doing something original, at least to me, though there's nothing new under the sun. I still felt like, okay, could I have a voice that's distinct? And I felt like I did. Now, I know that because, and I know it's weird, I know the art is weird because when I go back to San Francisco and do something, I always get the weird look. And if you can go there and weird somebody out, you're doing something. That's a weird place. It's like the weird place. You expect to see the weirdest things, and you do. And when they say, are you going to do something different to that? Because that's kind of scaring people around here, then I felt like I did something. Though my intention is not to do that. I'm just saying that I've done something that they haven't seen before. It has to be something they hadn't seen before. So, with that being the case, I pretty much started developing this style and had been studying different religions for years before this became something that I just decided I was going to dedicate my life to. I've always been interested in religions, always in different cultures and ways and walks of life, that a lot of that stuff I adapted, all those ideas and concepts I adapted and used in my own life, and then started finding myself like putting it into the art, and started and then like I'm gonna sound really like a new age person, but I started seeing things that I think like once you just sit back and you don't try to judge it, you just try to accept it, you start to see that everybody is sharing something, whether they know it or not, and that we all are important to each other. And that's something I call oneness and connectivity. And once you start to realize that, you start creating from a pure place. And the art tends to reflect that. So I would say that I'm not really trying to be a creative person in the sense that though I created this stuff, I'm not trying to say I created it. I'm trying to say, really, I'm a medium. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a shaman. This energy that I'm receiving, and it's a message I'm told to be put out, and I'm doing it on the surface for everybody else. And I do feel like that is not something I'm saying because I've tried to replicate it sometimes to failure. So I understand that, it's an energy, it's a vibration there, that when it's there, it's there, which makes me know that it's not coming from the self or that ego idea of who we think we are. So that's when the art started taking that change. So in this piece here, we have Flower of Life. It's kind of faint, and I made it that way intentionally because I believe like the way the world is, but in specific this country here, we tend to be bombarded by messages all day long. So with that being the case, I want to do something just in the same way they do, but in a positive manner. So I'm taking something that can, really bring a better quality of life to people, but doing it in subtle ways, And I tend to think that that's the way to do it, period. So now I do some, I wouldn't say it's graffiti because I'm not writing a name. That's another thing. Graffiti is like letter writing, but it's name writing. So when I do some letters, I'm not writing a name. I'm writing a word, and I'll write a word and I'll distort it. I'll abstract a word So much so it doesn't look like a word anymore, or that word in particular. So then when you read it, it just looks like abstraction in some way. But I feel like I put enough energy into that that when you're reading it, if it's a word that says awake, when you're seeing it, now it's like an advertisement. But this is telling you to wake up versus just I'm trying to sell you a product, or I'm writing a name just so you know that I was there. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'm not trying to go too deep unless everybody wants to know how deep the rabbit hole goes. Yeah. But I will say that it's taken me places that I didn't think I would be able to go, where people would be able to accept it. And that's the amazing thing, like doing what I've been doing, people from all over the world they're really open to it, accepting it. And I'm just like, wow, I thought this was kind of like, I didn't know whether to be accepted or not. And I'm kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? But honestly, I'm starting to see people awake, and awake in ways they were never awake before. So, it's an amazing time to be living, I think, anyways. Even with everything going on, and the only reason why I think all this stuff is going on is to distract us from the truth, which is everybody is waking up. So, I guess we go to questions from here, or?
Absolutely.
Okay, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, so the name of this piece is called The Highest Degree of Supreme Overstanding. And I'm always playing off of words, per se, but because I believe words have power. So another thing is I used to actually write a lot of poems, some short stories too. And I actually would have brought some here today, but I've been in the process of moving and I don't have all my stuff together. So I believe words have power. I believe they're tools and not toys. And because they are weapons of sound and meaning, that you should be really right about what you say, and not just say something just to say it. So with this painting here, The Highest Degree of Understanding, it's talking about love. So it came to me like, what is love? What does love really mean? If you had to define love, what is love? And some people will say, love is a car. Love is, when me and my significant other are together in bed. Love is money. Love is my house. And to me, love is the highest degree of overstanding. And overstanding to me is like being at the point where you see it all, because you're over it. You see it all, good, bad, whatever. You see it all, and you accept it. So love to me is accepting, if you're saying a person, accepting a person for their good, for their bad, for who they are. And that's what love is to me, especially if I'm talking about a person. So here, we're just doing what would be the typical family, but it's not really a family more so than it is, if you look at the way I kind of set it up, it's a pyramid, and of course pyramids have points and they carry degrees with them. So I'm really talking about certain degrees of life in that, and that's also why you have the flower life in there too. And tetrahedra being the basic foundation, the building block of life. So it's talking about life more than anything else, and just degrees of life. This painting here I did some years back. It was actually shown in Charlotte, for this event in Charlotte, and it's called Citizen. Well, actually, it's like two titles. It's called Reflections. We are reflections of our ancestors. Then it also is a citizen of Planet Rock. Anybody knows anything about hip hop? Planet Rock was a song back in the days by African Bambaataa, Zulu Nation, that kind of thing. And so when it all comes down to it too, I'm still a b-boy, and I'm from that kind of culture where, hip hop is important, and it is very important. Not the music, not just the music alone, but the culture of it all, what it did for the community, and what it still does as hip hop. I mean, not stuff you hear on the radio, not rap music, but hip hop music. Reflected the culture. So in this case here, third eye is open, and of course you see the heart there, but the heart actually has like instead of its own headphones. So love and the sound vibration being received, pretty much is what it is. And then over here, you gotta excuse me. This is like the latest one I did, and I was playing with the style. Just trying to see how free I could be with ideas and concepts. So like it has a long title, a really long title, and it goes something like, here we go. Where is that here? It's so it's the great mothership speaks of our origins, and so I hope to not offend anybody in here, but my idea of God really is masculine and feminine energy as a divine consciousness in the universe. And we are a reflection of that simply because we exist here. And I don't mean that in the sense that we exist, but I mean in everything there's masculine energy and feminine energy. So there must be a reason why that is there. There must be a reason why that pairing exists here in this physical plane. And well, I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's a whole other talk. But anyways, because of that, I ended up doing this painting. And this painting tends to it has a couple of things in there. So it has tetrahedra, it's talking about life. It also has 2,080 degrees, which are like 3 realms of existence, meaning physical, mental, and spiritual existence. Then we talk about the number 8, and the number 8 really is, when you turn it, depending on how you turn it, it can be perceived different ways. So I'm using 8. 8 is known as build, destroy, but it's also infinity. It's also perceived as infinity. So then we have the equation here, and this is also known as what the theory of relativity. But, in talking about it, I watched Eddie Griffin, and I think the last stand-up Eddie Griffin did was funny. But it wasn't really that funny. It was funny because he was saying some stuff that was serious that people needed to hear. They thought it was a joke. So he had this thing. He said Einstein, he had it, but he didn't have it all the way right. He said that theory that he was coming up with was right except for one part. He said he forgot about spirit, because that can overcome anything. If it's not part of that equation, it should be. And I thought about it. I was like, yeah, he's right about that. Because that's a reason why, that reason could actually determine why somebody does something. You can say that person, I just recently saw something, and I'm usually not the one to entertain a lot of videos, especially if they're on social media, because they can absorb and even take your energy. But I saw one, and a friend of mine posted it, and this guy was boxing. They were fighting something. He was a boxer. Somebody they were fighting, and he got his shoulder dislocated. So he was fighting with one arm, and because they seemed with the match go on, he was fighting with one arm and still had his arm because he didn't want to call the match over. So he was doing this and fighting. This guy was hitting him, and he was just dodging, and then this guy made a wrong move, and bam, and knocked him out with one arm. And I was just like, wow. But he kind of ducked and dodged for like 2 minutes. That was because of the spirit, because the average person might have said, I give up. My arm was dislocated and get knocked out. But because his spirit was strong in that aspect, he was a victor. So, I look at it like that. So, we're given all this, as I see it, we're given all this from the divine feminine force. And that's where it comes from. So, I just say that's those pieces there. Now, I bought these pieces because they were actually paintings, and they were on canvas and that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to kind of hold these up. So this is what I'm showing now. And it's going deeper beyond that. But I don't know if everybody can see this. So I have paintings on paper now. I'm doing some stuff on paper. And these will be shown in Charleston in May, late May. So I have this piece, if I can see it. I have this piece, and I also have this piece, which I'm showing this, but I've already sold this piece. This is already sold. This piece is called We Roam the Cosmos. This one is called The Car of the Grand Architect. And this one is actually Codex of Christ Consciousness. And so that's kind of like the new direction of it all. Like I said before, it can come all kind of weird. But hopefully, when people see it, it's something they can see in it that I'm trying to reach them with a message that I felt like was good for me to get to them. So yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The medium, I used to be known for doing like when I painted a picture, like I wish I had a band because I could bring in the paintings I really love to paint. I had paintings that were like 6 feet by 5 feet, really big paintings. So a lot of people know me for painting mostly spray painting. I painted like 80% of the canvas with spray painting. With all these, they're still like at least 50% spray paint. And then I go on with some acrylic paint, and then I may actually use some latex house paints too. You know, not going that way. But with the newest stuff is more watercolor. Actually, yeah, it's more watercolor and spray paint.
On the paper?
On the paper too, yeah. Because it's watercolor, it's a little bit heavier weight paper, and it can absorb it pretty well. It holds it pretty well. With it being textured like that, it's able to grab the paint. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm used to that. People usually be like,
I'm just overwhelmed.
People usually like. I mean, the very first time I was like, I don't know, I maybe said something wrong. But after a couple of times of talking like that, I'm like, okay, that's the response, and I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Could you possibly go into some of your influences? Because I see like some things that I study. It's just cool. I know you said you saw like street art, which I was saying you in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of go into that a little bit.
Who I'm influenced by? If I had to name my influences? Okay. It's one guy who stands out the most. Well, it's two people. No, anyways. So Donald White. He was known as Don D. He was one of the first trained writers in New York City. He was known as a style master general, being that he could write a letter, write his name several different ways, and it looked great. Don D. White was one of the guys. And he actually got a chance to show around the world on canvas and stuff like that. Another artist would be Max Beckman. Awesome. Max Beckman, he used to paint like these paintings that were like, he's a German expressionist, realistic. And then he went from realistic to start painting loosely. And then when he started painting loosely, that's when the paintings got beautiful. And he would actually do these paintings that they were metaphysical. And he had a lot of style. He was a stylish dude. And he actually came up with theories like about reality. Looking at him, you would never think that because he was a suit and tie kind of guy. He looked really sophisticated, would smoke a cigarette this way, and he was standing like that. But he talked about the world or the reality that we know being plastic. But he also talked about like
the reality that we know being plastic.
Yeah, plastic. Yeah, But also like he would talk about the surfaces and how to manipulate surfaces and create dimension in surface and not in dimension like beyond just depth and space. He was talking about something else completely when you read some of his theories on that. Also, my comic influence, it was this illustrator. His name is Sam Keith, and he used to do this comic called The Max, which was interesting because the Max was really, he thought he was a superhero, but he was mentally ill. So the way he saw his stuff was not how the world saw him. But the way this thing was drawn, it had so much style to it. I was like, wow, I've never seen anything drawn like this. And that's really what captured me with drawing. Someone with that comic book is that he had that kind of style that just stood out amongst a lot of different people, especially during time when everybody had their own style. Everybody wasn't drawing like manga. Everybody draws like manga now. It looks like some Japanese stuff, you know. But which is nothing wrong with manga because I'm influenced by that. But I just like the fact that he stood out amongst those guys during that time and everything.
What was that person's name?
Sam Keith. Yeah, he did the Max. That's the 2 X's. And I'll also say Hans Hoffman, because abstraction, I love abstraction as well. And Hans Hoffman was that guy. He pretty much put a lot of people who became known as abstract artists or even abstract expressionism to a whole nother level. His theories on how to manipulate the surface, it's crazy. And then Ram LZ, which I suggest if you write anything, you need to look at Ram LZ. And I'm not talking about his artwork, more he wrote a treatise on letter writing. He wrote a Ram LZ. Yeah, Ram LZ. This is one letter. He's out there. Like his name, Ram LZ, is an equation. Yeah, it's one word. Ram with 2 M's, ELLEZEE, Ram LZ. And he wrote an equation. He wrote a treatise on letters. He took his time and studied letters. And guys, like if you see an interview, he's gonna come off kind of weird. But he wrote this treatise and it broke down letters. And then I started getting into letters even more deeper because of this guy, which he studied letters to the point that, you know, letters form words, right? But letters are also symbols. That's what they are. They're symbols that form words. So before there were words, there were symbols. So he went back to Phoenician and breaking down it from a Phoenician Sumerian point of view. And you're just like, godly. And this treatise is extremely long. And he's breaking it down letter per letter. And I was like, this guy was obsessed with he was obsessed with it. But when you read it, you're like, this makes so much sense. And why wasn't thinking this way to start with? So Ram LZ is definitely one of my influences, just because letters are still important because we all use words, you know. So, which I'm going to do a show on. I'm going to do a show on words, and it's going to be, I'm taking another side of what I think he was doing, but then I'm looking at it from a sacred geometry point of view, in a sense. I'm looking at the geometry of letters that singly as themselves within what degrees of energy did they create and how they need to be protected and all this other stuff. So that's going to be something else. But yeah, because of his influence over me, I'm like studying that to a whole another level too. But yeah, so I would say those guys. But I was telling another thing I'll share with y'all. Nobody really knows. Michael knows. And I think as a group we're all going to be talked about too in an interview. But if anybody's familiar with the Afro Punk blog, they interviewed me and some other people from my group. So that interview will be coming out soon. But I was talking to the journalist about it, and I was trying to explain to her, but she's into what she's into. So like studying outside the frame right now, I think she's really into that more than she's into writing. And then I wouldn't say she knows, I guess in my mind, the important writers or whatever they do. But I was telling her, I was like, since you don't know these artists I'm speaking of, let me give you an example. So, as I came through the door, like Socrates was like, you know, I've seen this stuff. It reminds me of, while I'm filming it, it reminds me of like George Clinton, but also like, you know, I was studying, what class was it? Yeah, talking about Sun Ra. And so I told her, I was like, if you had to say I was somebody musically, I would say Sun Ra, and I forgot what I said, some other name. And she's like, I don't know who those people are. I was like, what? You don't know who those, okay. And I gave her some other example. And she's like, no, I don't know. I was like, okay. So though I don't have an appearance like that, I come off kind of spacey. So my connection to what I feel is divine, and then also what I feel, I won't say earthly, but more connected to, or more grounded towards, I guess I would say earthly, like the planet would be, I guess, something that's a little bit more noticeable, which would be the figures, per se. Because I feel like all the space that I create here, to me feels more like space, to me, than something that's not necessarily Earth, than the figures themselves. Though the figures may not be recognized as, okay, they look humanoid, but can I relate to them? You know, how can I relate to them? So, I don't know. Anyways, that's me.
Any other questions for Cedric?